Hello everyone, and welcome to another video of the Alt Tech Reviews. We just made a video of the evolution of the Nvidia 70 series graphics card, which you can check up here. Now let's see how the 80 series card had developed over the years. The first 80 series card was a GTX1080, released 12 years ago in 2008. I was going to make a comparison of all 80 series GPUs starting from GTX1080. However, I figured that there's no meaningful game or synthetic benchmark will be able to run on all these cards. Not to say the GTX 280 does not have an HDMI output, so I cannot hook it up to my screen capture card. So today, I decided that we're going to use GTX 980, 1080, and RTX 2080 to see how much the 80 series card had improved over the past 6 years. This review does not include the RTX 3080, because it's a paper lunch and Nvidia paid the media to say it actually exists. Okay, I'm kidding, but it's impossible to get an RTX 3080 at even near MSRP, thanks to all the scalpers out there. Anyways, here's a quick comparison between the three. Please note that these three cards have different architectures, so you cannot directly compare the specs as they don't scale that way. However, what we can see here is that they all use the 104 SKU GPU of their generation, which is the third highest end GPU following 100 and 102. The Maxwell-based GTX 980 was priced at $549, and the Pascal-based GTX 1080 was priced at $599, while the Turing-based RTX 2080 is priced at $699. TDP-wise, the GTX 980 has the best TDP of 165 watts, thanks to the Maxwell architecture. The GTX 1080 is rated for 180 watts, and the RTX 2080 is rated for 215 watts. For the review today, we're using the Founders Edition GTX 980, a MSI Ventus GTX 1080, and an HP OEM RTX 2080 with reference PCB. We'll be doing a separate video on this amazing HP version RTX 2080. It will change your mind on those OEM cards. So please subscribe if you don't want to miss that. Enough said, now let's run some benchmarks and see just how much the 80 series card has improved over the years. For the test bench today, we're using a 7900X processor with an Asus X299 Deluxe 2, with 32 gigs of DDR4 3200 MHz CL14 memories running in quad channel mode. We're using the latest 457.3 game-ready driver for all these cards. So first is the compute benchmark. We're running the AI compute benchmark in both OpenCL and CUDA. So let's take a look at the results here. So the RTX 2080 has achieved about 3 to 4 times improvements over GTX 980 and has double the performance of GTX 1080 thanks to its extra RT core and Tensor cores. And as I mentioned in the 70 series video, CUDA has improved in the past few years. So for the GTX 1080 and 980, they have achieved higher OpenCL score than CUDA, but for RTX 2080, it's achieving about 20% higher score in CUDA than OpenCL in the same workload. Next is the Octane bench. I did not turn the RTX on because otherwise it won't be a fair comparison. So here again, thanks to the RT core and Tensor cores, the RTX 2080 has achieved double the score of 1080. And the 1080 is also having about 30% improvement over the GTX 980, which is very remarkable. Next comes our game benchmarks. Let's first start with Hitman 2. As I mentioned before, Hitman 2 is a Direct 11 game and it's not that GPU intensive. So right here we're seeing about the same score for 2080 and 1080. But they have about 30% performance lead over the GTX 980. In Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we're seeing a constant 60% to 70% increasement over the generation. However, one thing to note is that this game will give you a detailed chart of how much the result is GPU bounded and how much the result is CPU bounded. For the GTX 980, you can see we're 100% GPU bound, which means the GPU is limiting our frame rate to 64 frames per second. But for GTX 1080, it's only 86%, which means 16% of the score is limited by our CPU. But for the RTX 2080, it is only 25% GPU bound, which means our CPU has 75% of responsibility for not getting a higher FPS. In GTA 5, things are a little bit interesting. we're achieving almost the same score over the 3 generations. So I assume it might be CPU bounded, but also keep in mind, GTA 5 is a rather old title by now, and 1080p really does not put too much pressure on the whole system. Things might be a little different in 4K, but I don't have a 4K compatible monitor or capture card at this point. So next is our 3D Mark time spy test. We're seeing a 70% performance increasement from GTX980 to GTX1080, and about 40% improvement from the 1080 to 2080. Maybe Port Royal will be a better benchmark to test the real capability of the RTX 2080. But the 1080 and 980 just does not have the ray tracing hardware, so it won't be possible to compare these three in Port Royal. So, in the past 6 years, the AI compute performance for GPUs has increased by about 4 times, while the gaming performance has increased by about 2.5 times. That is very remarkable if you compare that to the CPU world. Thank you, Intel, or should I rather say, thank you, AMD. Okay, that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching.